Moses had said, God brought you out from Egypt so that he might bring you into the promised land. That is always God's purpose. Never to take us away from what is the best for us, but to take us toward it. And God always finishes what he starts. So he brought them out of Egypt, not to let them languish and die in the wilderness, though many of them did. But that new generation would now be able to enter Canaan. Now just think about our own life and what God is trying to bring us into. It's an ability to rest in God and further our relationship with him. And some of us in our journey might be struggling to find that sense of rest and relationship. And that is what we see pictured for us in Joshua 9 and 10. A little reminder, the New Testament tells us that these events are not just ancient history. They are examples from which we can learn for our own spiritual development. That's why we're taking time in this ancient literature. So God brings them to the promised land. However, the promised land is also a problem land. And they are going to have to cooperate with God to enjoy all that he has for them. And it's the same in our Christian life. We are not in a playground, but a battleground. And don't we experience the battles that go with this wonderful Christian life? And that's why it's good to meet not only in large group instruction, but smaller groups, because we can encourage one another on how we fight the battle and learn from each other. So God's people are in the promised land now, and it's a problem land. They are in front of Mount Gerizim and Mount Ebal, and this is where they shouted out, affirming their God, which would be heard on both mountains. They were confessing their relationship with God in a great worship service. Meanwhile, the kings of Canaan were working out how to destroy them. And as soon as the worship service is over, they face yet another battle. And we might face a battle as soon as we leave church. You're driving home and some idiot cuts you up, or you know that you're going into a difficult meeting at work, or fill in the blank. And it robs us of joy. Maybe we are going to find out some news this week. There are battles that we will face. Well, as we get in now to chapter 9, just recall Joshua's strategy is to divide and conquer. He wants to cut the land in half, effectively conquering the center of the land. Jericho is first to go and Ai is second. So they will conquer the center and go south and north to do the same. But just a few miles away from them is a clever bunch of people called the Gibeonites. And hearing what Joshua has done to Jericho and Ai, they planned with subterfuge, pretending to be ambassadors. They took old sacks on their donkeys, old wineskins torn and mended, old and patched sandals on their feet and old garments on themselves. And all the bread of their provision was dry and mouldy. They went to Joshua and the people saying, "We are from a far country." Actually, they are just 15 miles away and next on the hit list. And the option that they come up with is, let's pretend that we're envoys from a far land. We're at a distance and appeal to their pride. It will make them sound like we have heard of their greatness. It's enough to make anybody go. I'm pretty cool, you know. They know they are backed into a corner, so it's survival mode for this people, and they're resorting to deceit. And in the Christian life, as we want to move on with God, we have a subtle enemy. Satan transforms himself into an angel of light. So the Gibeonites come saying, make a treaty with us. And Joshua is very direct. Who are you and where do you come from? Well, not only are we from a far country, but from a very far country. Your servants have come because of the name of the Lord your God. We have heard of his fame and all that he did in Egypt and all that he did to the 2 kings of the Amorites who were beyond the Jordan, to Sihon the king of Heshbon and Og the king of Bashan who was at Ashtaroth. Why didn't they mention what God did at Jericho or at Ai? Because it would blow their cover. News travels slowly, and there's no way they could have known about it being from such a far country. So they go way back in the news. Now we need to think about this. Many Christians get fooled by anyone who mentions God or Jesus. It's like we're looking for a movie star, musician, politician, sport personality to just say the word God. And then we say, oh look, that said God bless you. They must be a Christian. Not so fast. See if there is a life change. These people had all the right vocabulary and showed their mouldy bread and old wineskins, torn clothes and worn out sandals. And the men of Israel checked this out. But what did they not do? They didn't ask counsel of the Lord. And the people made an agreement to let them live. There are 2 problems here. The false pretenses of the Gibeonites and the failure to pray by the Israelites. They act very logically, examining the bread and wine, and they talked it over, making a logical deduction. Problem is, they're wrong. And had they prayed, it could have been so different. And we don't usually say it, but our attitude is, Lord, I've got this. I mean, you're good and stuff, but you know, there's bigger fish to fry for you in this great universe. You've got a lot of important things to do. You've got to take care of the politics at the nation's capital, and you've got stuff going on down the street with that family. They're in a bad way. But I can handle this. And we don't even ask him. We don't pray about those things that are happening during the day. Let's realize that we never bother God. And actually nothing's big to him anyway. It's all little stuff. And he never goes, oh, you again. He loves it. But I've already prayed about this matter a dozen times. Ask him 3 dozen times. A Jewish proverb says, it's better to ask the way 10 times than to go down the wrong road once. Say, Lord, I want to acknowledge you in all my ways. Am I getting it right? What are your directions? Bring it before the Lord, because it's better than going the wrong way. Joshua made peace and a covenant to let them live. Moses had said, when entering the land, make no peace treaty at all with the inhabitants of Canaan. However, if there are foreigners from other countries who want to let you settle in this land and be peaceful neighbours, you can make a peace treaty with them, but not the inhabitants of this land. And that is because the Lord spoke about the iniquity of the people in Canaan. To Abraham, God said, in effect, you can't have the land yet because the evil of the people is bad, but the people are not yet completely bad. They're not full of evil. The land will be yours after 400 years when it's absolutely shocking. I think over 400 years is a long time for God to be patient with anybody, don't you? And he was saying, I'm giving you plenty of time to turn away from all this. And some, like Rahab, did. 420 years is up. But the Gibeonites were successful in fooling Israel. Can I just say that before you form any alliance with anybody, that you consult the Lord? If you're going to go into business with someone, make sure you're not unequally yoked with that person. If you are dating somebody, and but he's so wonderful. This has got to be of the Lord, the way we've come together. Or, look at her, she dropped out of heaven. Okay, please check under her hair. There may be some horns. Please make sure that if you are making a long-term commitment and a lifetime commitment, when it comes to a marriage relationship, make sure that person is not like a Gibeonite. Will you do that? 3 days later, they heard that they were near neighbours. They didn't attack them because they'd sworn an oath. They made a mistake, yes, but now they had made a promise. Once we make a promise, we are to keep it. Now let's underline, the devil, like the Gibeonites, is clever and deceptive. Paul says, we are not ignorant of his devices. Well, thank you for the vote of confidence, Paul. But the truth is, many of us are ignorant of his deceptive ways. He has a long history of studying what makes people crumble, crash and fall. And what is it that could strengthen us to be perceptive in Satan's attacks? It is a proximity to the Lord. It was the same with Israel. The satanic strategy is overcome by getting close to the Lord. And the closer we are to him, we won't be immune from attacks. But we will be aware of them. Our Bible says, submit unto the Lord, resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Both are important. We submit to God. Then we have the strength to resist the devil, and he will flee from us. Well, Joshua had a strong word for the Gibeonites. You will live, but be our woodcutters and water carriers. You are cursed, and none of you shall be freed from being slaves for the house of my God. And what is the house of my God? It's the tabernacle, and later the temple. That's where the Lord dwells in a special way among his people in Old Testament times. And they said, we did this because we were afraid. We are in your hands. Do with us as seems good and right to do to us. And they made them woodcutters and water carriers for the congregation and for the altar of the Lord in the place that he would choose. That will be Jerusalem eventually, even to this day, or the day that this was written. I find this fascinating. The whole reason they were told to get rid of the Canaanites is so that they would not defile Israel with their brutal practices. It was like cutting a cancerous tumour out of the human body so as a person lives. And now there are the Gibeonites with their treachery and idolatry living among them. And what can we do? we make them work in the tabernacle. They are going to be exposed to the worship of the true God. And they're going to be influenced by what they see and hear. They must get wood for that altar of sacrifice in the outer courtyard. They have to provide water to wash the blood away in all the sacrifices that will be enacted. Isn't this a good strategy? You're going to come close enough to be influenced by the true worship system. And later we discover that when Joshua apportions the land, that the Gibeon area will be given to the Benjamites. Also, the city of Gibeon will become a Levite town. The priests are going to be living in it. The teachers of God's word will be around them. It's like putting the salt of the earth in their town. Later, the tabernacle itself will rest on a hill in Gibeon. And then much later, when Israel returns to rebuild the temple under Nehemiah, some of the people helping to rebuild the city of Jerusalem are, you've guessed it, the Gibeonites. So they were influenced and did become helpers. Don't miss this. When we make a mistake, make it work for us, right? They made a mistake with the Gibeonites. The Gibeonites are going to work for them the rest of their lives in the tabernacle and be exposed to the true worship. When we make a mistake, use that mistake, not only grow from it, but now it becomes a part of our story. And we can use that to help other people. Well, coming now to chapter 10, we have Adonizek, the king of Jerusalem. Don't name your kids that if you're looking for Bible names. I think that's taking a bit far. King Adonizek enlisted other kings to attack Gibeon because they had made a peace treaty with Joshua. Their thinking is that's 3 cities down. Jericho, Ai, now Gibeon. They are becoming unstoppable. Unless we form a coalition, we will not be able to stop their advancement into the land. We have to take steps to recover a city that has been lost. They have surrendered. We attack and take over their fortified city, making it our own. Let's go and get it. Do we see God's sense of humour? God is allowing this to help Israel advance and accelerate taking over the land. You see, instead of going after 5 city-states separately, 1 battle, 2 battle, 3 battle, 4 battle, 5 battle, no, God will have all the battles all at one time on one day. He will knock 5 of them out. Bam! It's over. It's gone. I love God's economy. What seems to you to be like an uh-oh moment could be an aha moment. When something seems to go from bad to worse, it's a good idea to stop and ask, what is God up to? What is God doing? Before we raise the white flag and say, it's over, goodbye, cruel world, look up and see what God is doing. He has a way of turning our blunders into blessings. Gibeon sent to Joshua at Gilgal saying, SOS, help! And with an agreement in place, Joshua and his soldiers will help. They believe a promise that Joshua made them, and they turn all their worries and problems over to him. And this is always a good strategy with Jesus. We have secured a promise from Jesus, you see. I will never leave you. I will never forsake you. We've got problems, turn those problems over to him and rest in the promise that he made us. In this regard, Gibeon was wise. The Lord said, "Your enemies are delivered over to you," past tense. That battle hasn't started yet, but not a man of them shall stand before you. How can God say this when the battle hasn't yet begun? God knows everything from the beginning, doesn't he? So when he looks at the future, it's done. That's why he can give such detail about the future in advance, because to him, it's as good as done. And Joshua and his men march at night, 15 to 20 miles uphill in the dark to surprise them in the morning. And the enemy was chased away. And I just love when God fights, he brings a panic. God fights so much better than I fight. Now, sometimes I'm in the mood when somebody is cantankerous to give it back to them. But it's much more rewarding to pull back and let God into the battle. He is so much better at it than I am, and more creative. And as people attack us, we can defend ourselves, but it will wear us out. Or we can let the Lord defend us and we watch him work. As these people fled before Israel, the Lord cast down large hailstones on them, and they died. More died from the hailstones than were killed with swords. There is no way to explain this, you know, other than God stepped in. If this is a natural phenomenon, isn't it interesting that they only hit the bad guys? That's quite a coincidence, isn't it? God is a better fighter than we are. Then Joshua spoke to the Lord as Israel was watching and listening. Sun, stand still, and moon, do the same. And they did. It's interesting to read explanations of this event that people try to make. I've read a lot. I've read that on that day the earth tilted to bring a prolonged lighting effect on that part of the earth. It just gave a little more tilt. That doesn't take away the miraculous, of course. Others have said it was a localized refraction of sunlight, like in Exodus, when there was darkness over the land of Egypt. It was a localized darkness. Others say didn't really happen. It's a poetic description. Israel were given strength by the Lord and they could get twice the work done in one day. I disagree with that. It's interesting that in the ancient times, the calendar seems to have changed around 701 BC. Ancient calendars were based on a 360-day year, but around 701 something changed. The Romans added 5.5 days to their years. The Jewish calendar added a month, and it occurred 7 times over 19 years. They had a flexible month. Interestingly, in antiquity, in the writings of every single continent except the Antarctica, there are writings about a long day that happened in history. There was even a Professor Pickering from Harvard University who, in looking back and forward at calendars, noticed that around the time of Joshua, there is a missing day. And scientists at the University of Maryland, in doing computerized projections of the Earth, Moon and Sun, have also noticed a missing day, almost 23 hours and 20 minutes to be precise. Verse 13 says this was written in the book of Jasher. I wouldn't know. I've never read it. But the sun stood still and the moon stopped for about a whole day. And let me throw verse 14 into the mix. There was never a day like it before or since, a day when the Lord listened to a man. Surely the Lord was fighting for Israel. Now, let me apply that to us. Do we know how to lengthen our days? By the way, just a thought. When texting, people who write you instead of YOU for you, what do they do with all the time they have saved? Let me say how to lengthen our day. Speak to the sun. Not the S-U-N, but the S-O-N. When we feel like we can't get enough done and we feel pressured, stop and talk to the sun. Involve him in our lives. I think it's a good thing at times to take a sheet of paper, to write on it what fills up a week for us, and then prayerfully check it over with the Lord Jesus. Am I spending too much time doing this and too little time doing that? Do I have a struggle here between the good and the best, and I need to balance things out a whole lot more and take time to be holy and speak oft to the Lord? Talk to the sun, and we will find that as the day is, so shall our strength be. Well, those 5 kings were found in the cave at Makkedah. Joshua had large rocks rolled up against it and men posted to guard it. So these are the first rolling stones, although the recent ones are about as old. Joshua's men carried on winning the battle, and then they brought out the 5 kings. They were killed and strung up. Dr. James Dobson used to tell of a convent sign he once saw. Absolutely no trespassing. Violators will be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. Signed, the Sisters of Mercy. Please again remember that God waited 400 years before telling Joshua to show no mercy. Some people entertain sentimental notions about God. Oh, he will never be angry. But if God can't in any sense be angry with people, what does that mean? It surely means he is being patient. He is showing that patience right now. If God is not subject to real provocation by human sin, then all those Bible words such as long-suffering and mercy have no meaning. As in the case of Grandma, who smiled during the noise of the kids playing and shouting at the top of their voices. She'd switched off her hearing aid. And the composure of such a God would reflect not patience, but insensitivity. The Bible is never embarrassed in telling us that God is personally affronted by sin. And moving quickly from verse 28, the city-states to the south were conquered. Verse 40 is the summary verse. So Joshua subdued the whole region, including the hill country, the Negev, the western foothills, and the mountain slopes. Together with all their kings. He left no survivors. And moving on, then Joshua returned with all Israel to the camp at Gilgal. And what a relief! And what a difference when we know and accept another Joshua. His New Testament name is Jesus. And he took all the anger of a holy God upon himself. What do we read in the New Testament? We were by nature objects of wrath, but because of his great love for us, God, who is rich in mercy, made us alive with Christ, even when we were dead in transgressions. It is by grace you have been saved. Grace is why God sent his Son into this world to do for us what we could not do for ourselves, to transform us from what we are, sinners separated from him, into what we are becoming, Christ-like, and with him forever. Let's finish and focus on that note. Whatever the battles, we may have to go through them. We may need to be strong in the Lord and in his mighty power, but to know that the ultimate battle has been won and that we can rest and relate